Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Our attention is focused on St. Lucia, where a former minister in the SLP administration sues the Customs and Excise Department. This story takes the lead in our 994th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 26th November 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Dr. Ernest Hilaire is suing the Customs Department and its Comptroller of Customs, Peter Chico, over the confiscation of his vehicle. His legal team has already initiated the process of filing the legal documents. Dr. Hilaire is seeking damages that he says relate to wrongful seizure and detention of the SUV. Collage Alfred of HTS News Force reports.
Another chapter has begun in the ongoing Land Rover discovery saga involving Dr. Ernest Hilaire, the Customs Department, and Prime Minister Alan Chasney. In a previous interview, Hilaire challenged officials to make good on a promise to seize his vehicle in the wake of a statement issued by the Office of the Prime Minister on Wednesday, September 2nd. The Prime Minister's office alleged that Dr. Hilaire was found wanting in following procedure in the acquisition of a Discovery Sport vehicle during his tenure as St. Lucia High Commissioner to London.
I challenge the Prime Minister that if he is convinced that I have acted in contravention of the law and he respects the rule of law, then let him and his surrogates take court action to repossess any property which I'm in possession of, which he believes is not rightfully owned by me. I shall continue then to exercise my right to sue him for abuse of public office and malicious persecution.
The situation reached fever pitch after the previous Comptroller of Customs was replaced by the current office holder, Mr. Peter Chico. Rumors began to swirl about the imminent seizure of the Land Rover. In August, Dr. Hilaire alleged changes in the management of key agencies were part of an elaborate plot to embarrass him.
They want a controller who is friendly enough and bold enough to act upon their wishes, which is to take the vehicle from me and embarrass me. Of course, I would add that foolish enough to do that.
On the evening of Thursday, November 12th, customs officers bearing a search warrant took possession of the vehicle. Dr. Hilaire again remained resolute that litigation would swiftly follow. Now, speaking to media personnel outside Parliament on Tuesday, November 24th, he confirms that his legal team has given notice of civil action in the courts.
Our lawyers serve the first set of papers that we serve what is called the pre-action papers. They basically the preliminary letter to inform the Comptroller of Customs that we are instituting legal action against him. We are also taking action against him in his personal capacity, and we are suing for damages, for damage to my reputation, for illegally seizing the vehicle, and for malfeasance in public office, abuse of public office. And I think we had written many letters to the controller indicating to him the absurdity of what he was doing and also cautioning him not to proceed along those lines. We had also indicated to him we had a copy of a report he had prepared and statements he had made in that report. And even on the day when the vehicle was taken, the lawyer served him another letter saying to him what he's doing is unconstitutional, it's illegal, and that he would be held to account in court for his actions. He made his decision and he acted accordingly. Clearly, you can see from the reaction, it was a political decision driven by political motives. The United Workers' Party and their surrogates were all over rejoicing that they had taken the vehicle. I had said to them they can come and take it whenever they want, and they've shown me they can take it.
Dr. Hilaire says no stone will be left unturned in his quest for vindication.
We have written to the Prime Minister indicating to him that, he is involved in the abuse of public office and malfeasance in public office, and he still proceeded to take the vehicle. So he too will get his letters indicating to him that we are instituting legal action against him for abuse of public office and malfeasance in public office.
But what is at stake for the Customs Department and the Comptroller, who are now being sued by Dr. Hilaire? The former diplomat's legal counsel is seeking damages and punitive damages proportionate to the cost of the vehicle, which is valued at $400,000. Solange Alfred, HTS News Force.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
St. Lucia's former aviation minister Alva Baptiste has welcomed the return of Liat to the skies, albeit on a limited basis. Here is Joachim Duplessis of HTS News Force with some details.
Former Civil Aviation Minister Alva Baptiste has welcomed the resumption of Liat's operations. Liat suspended its operations in March 2020 after many Caribbean islands closed their ports to curtail the spread of COVID-19. Debt and the fallout from the pandemic forced the carrier into liquidation. Liat went into the administration process and was to be restructured and reorganized under a new entity under the same name. On November 1st, Liat resumed operations with a flight from Antigua to Dominica following a 7-month absence. The air carrier will provide limited flights until it decides on a commercial schedule. Baptiste says although the airline has done all in its power to minimize costs, losses and insolvency are synonymous with the aviation industry.
Liat had different types of aeroplane. They had what is called a BN2. They had a Twin Otter. They had Dash 8s. And so you needed different pilots trained to operate different aeroplanes. You had to store different spare parts for the different aeroplanes. Liat moved into a situation of a standardized fleet of aeroplanes. So they store one set of spare parts. And so maintenance would be reduced. They try to computerize their operations to make it more efficient. Liat did quite a bit to ensure efficiency. But then again, airlines on the whole do not make vast amount of profits. The airline industry is not an industry, despite the growth in demand for air travel, that actually bursts into profits.
The government of St. Lucia has been strongly opposed to providing a financial bailout to the cash-strapped airline. Baptiste says the current administration should perhaps reconsider its commitment to Liat.
I believe that is rather unfortunate, I must say. St. Lucia needs to take a fresh look at the way that we treat Liat. Liat is very important to us. In fact, Liat is important for us. The net benefit to the economy is a positive one. And so, just like we set aside monies for healthcare, we set aside money for education, we will have to look at our strategy dealing with air transport and allocate resources so that there is a net benefit to our economy.
Critics have hammered the government over its focus on the Uinura International Airport redevelopment during the pandemic recession. The ex-Civil Aviation Minister declares that the HIA redevelopment project may not encompass Liat due to the physical separation of air traffic where international flights land at HIA and the regional at George Charles. Furthermore, he states that it may produce no profit to the country.
One of the profitable routes for Liat is George Charles to Barbados. People go to the embassy, people go to Barbados for various reasons. So they just figure out, well, one of the most profitable routes is St. Lucia, Barbados. So why we have to pump money into Liat? But we suffer when it comes to travel to St. Vincent, where you have to go all over the globe before you can get to St. Vincent. So we need to look at that. We need to rationalize routes. We must always call for greater efficiency as far as practicable. But staying away from supporting Liat is certainly an unfortunate situation.
The government of Antigua says the restructuring of Liat seeks to improve its viability and sustainability. They hope that the resumption of Liat's operations can return connectivity to its network, which was impacted by the lockdown. Joachim Duplessis, HTS News Force.
In other news, some of the people who have taken up illegal residency on private property at Serra Johanna on the east bank of Demerara are blatantly and presumptuously refusing the government's offer of relocation. Following this latest development, the power of attorney has now moved to the courts for help. HGP's Wendell Badri reports.
Government ministers Mohabir Anil Nandlal and Kwame McCoy have offered the government's assistance in relocating squatters from a private property belonging to Rafik Bash, located at Sierra Joanna on the east bank of Demerara, when they visited the private property on Sunday afternoon. This, even though some persons outrightly refused to be relocated.
Mr. McCoy will take the names of those who are prepared to cooperate and prepared to relocate. And the others, well, the gentleman will be advised by his lawyers to do what is legally available to him to ensure that he gets his property.
Legal Affairs Minister Anil Nandlal is on record as saying that the government will expedite applications for house lots to those squatters who are willing to accept the government's help. Nandlal also stated,
"We can't take a side and tell the man who owns the land by transport that he must not occupy his land and use his land as the owner. We have to be fair. We have to ensure that the law is applied. Private property is protected by the Constitution."
However, power of attorney for the property, Abdul Azim, told Nightly News that he's not fully satisfied with the outcome of Sunday's meeting between the residents and the ministers. He stated that he would be moving to the courts to expedite the process of having the squatters removed.
I feel 2 or 3 months is too long for me.
All right.
And I would want my place really like yesterday.
I got you. All right.
Because we have so many things to go and get done. We have our programs and it's stagnating it. And I think that this is unfair.
Last week, Abdul highlighted the plight he was faced with in contending with the more than 24 squatters who have taken up illegal residency on the businessman's property and has been blatant in their refusal to move. The owners have been met with staunch opposition while attempting to execute works on the 4 acres of land, which has been earmarked for the development of Inter Alia, an Islamic institute, as well as a number of agricultural projects. Azim claimed that the squatters would obstruct the path of machinery which would venture on the property to carry out developmental works, and that some would dispel and dispute his claims of ownership to the property, even though on numerous occasions he has produced the requisite documents showing legal ownership, which were also seen by this newscast. The businessman claims he has also been threatened by the squatters. The man said he, along with the owners of the property, who are overseas based, have become very frustrated over the issue and were at their wits' end, hence the call for the relevant authorities to intervene and for the law to take its course. Wendell Badri, HGP Nightly News.
There has been a flood of reactions to Antigua and Barbuda's COVID-19 classification as very high risk by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. Here is Chet Green, Foreign Affairs Minister of Antigua, who spoke with ABS's Cherilyn Biza on this issue.
It took us by shock for a couple of reasons. One, there was no prior notification or a diplomatic note or any kind of official notice. Second, it does not comport with the facts as we know them, neither locally nor regionally.
He says his first reaction was that it cannot be right and sought online to compare other jurisdictions, which further cemented his view. The Foreign Affairs Minister highlighted Barbados and St. Lucia placed at level 2 or moderate risk, with figures of 259 cases and 7 deaths, and 226 cases and 2 deaths, respectively. As a tourism-dependent country, Minister Green says this classification is potentially crippling.
And so anything that stands between us and the economic fortunes of our country, it is not a light matter.
In doing what is required in defense of the country's image, the Foreign Affairs Minister explains the course of action.
Engaged Ambassador Ron Saunders, who is our appointed ambassador to the United States, asked that he engage the U.S. government in Washington for an understanding, the basis on which this ranking, designation, or whatever you call it, was arrived at.
He says understanding their measurement tools will benefit the country, as the mission is to have unmistakably the best COVID-19 management response anywhere in the world. He urges Antiguans and Barbudans to continue to be safe and observe the protocols. Cherilyn Biza reporting for ABS News.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.